Con el paso del tiempo y a través de un mejor conocimiento de la Biblia, los adventistas observadores del sábado entendieron que estaban descubriendo verdades que era necesario dar a conocer.
Só quem passou pelo desapontamento que pode ter uma ideia do que ele significou, porque o preconceito era muito grande e eles romperam essa barreira, porque eles tinham esse senso de que eu tenho uma missão, eu pertenço a Deus, o mundo vai acabar e eu não estou interessado em acabar com ele. Eu quero estar comprometido com Deus e sua palavra.
They were looking, however, for something more than just newness. They actually wanted to be part of a New Testament-style church. The great burden of many of these religious groups was to go back to the first century, the primitive church, as they called it. And various expressions of that primitive church were springing up. Adventism had this same strong impulse. How do we bring back biblical Christianity before centuries of tradition and culture got layered on top of it? What did biblical Christianity look like? What were its practices? Most importantly, what did it believe? What did Jesus teach?
Siguiendo el ejemplo de Jesús, quien se tomó el tiempo para enseñar, desarrollaron métodos para el estudio de la Biblia y compartir sus experiencias. Uno de estos métodos fue la escuela sabática, que comenzó incluso antes de la organización formal de la Iglesia.
When Millerism first began, Sabbath schools were being conducted in Protestant churches, Baptist, Methodist, others of that nature, to help children, again, who were not in school. They called them Sabbath schools, even though they worshiped on Sunday. In the 19th century, many of the Protestant churches did that. Over the time, they changed to call it Sunday school. But anyway, when Millerism began in the 1820s to 30s and 40s, there was an interest in also beginning to help children. So when James White, in 1852, he thought it would be a good idea to write some Sabbath school lessons for children. And those first Sabbath school lessons that he wrote were for children and for youth, not for adults. He wrote 4 Sabbath school lessons, published for the first time in 1852 in the publication called The Youth Instructor. Of course, at the very center was the study of Scripture. Extremely important. This in a sense, is really the only atmosphere that we have in our church where we can come together, open Scripture, and study in any systematic and organized way. And so Bible study is at the very core of the goals for Sabbath school, but there are others. There are fellowship and outreach and emphasis on mission.
En 1849, James White dijo, "El mensaje debe volar, porque el tiempo es corto". Inspirados en este mensaje y a medida que el espíritu misionero entraba en los corazones del pueblo adventista, muchas iniciativas surgieron. Por ejemplo, aquí, en la villa de South Lancaster, un grupo de mujeres dirigidas por Roxy Rice encontró el modo de orar por sus vecinos, ayudar y visitar a los enfermos y necesitados y enviar por correo miles de panfletos con la verdad del Evangelio a todos los Estados Unidos y muchos países más. Hoy en día, con ese mismo espíritu, la Iglesia Adventista sirve diligentemente a través de escuelas, hospitales, medios de comunicación y toda clase de instituciones, compartiendo el mensaje de la pronta venida de Cristo.
Como começou publicações dentro da igreja? Dentro da igreja começou em 1848, quando a Ellen White recebeu a primeira visão. E na visão, o esposo dela estava para sair para cortar feno em uma fazenda para ganhar dinheiro para visitar os primeiros adventistas dentro da América. É quando Ellen White é tomada em visão. E depois da visão, ela diz para o seu esposo, eu tenho uma mensagem para você. Você deve parar e começar a escrever, imprimir e mandar ao povo.
The way you drew attention to any new faith group or to the teachings of Scripture that you believed in was to publish a paper. And in fact, Adventists very soon discovered that in order to gather together and coalesce those who still hung on to the beliefs of Jesus soon coming, they needed a paper. That first little magazine, only 8 pages, very small, was published in 1849 in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. It probably had only about 3,000 persons who it even could have gone to, and the first numbers were certainly restricted even to a smaller group. But it began to do its work quickly. People began to see in this little magazine a place to express their faith, their hope, and their questions.
Desde su origen, La comunicación entre los adventistas sirvió no solo para informar, sino como una manera de mantener a la familia unida.
The Seventh-day Adventist Church is a global family. There are many Christian churches that have sort of very loose linkage internationally, and they tend to be somewhat independent local churches or national churches. We are not. We are a tightly bonded family around the world, and we share faith, we share our resources, and when we think and plan mission, we share with the church globally. So the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which today celebrates 150 years since we were formally organized as a global family, we have become a global family of some 25 to 30 million, young and old.
One of the most plaintive letters I have ever read in the review was in the mid-1850s from a young woman living out in Iowa, today in the central United States, but it was the frontier in the 1850s. And she writes, "I am, so far as I know, the only Adventist in my county, and I am very lonely, and I look through the pages of the review to find my church."